Yeah,
But
just in the nick of time.
yeah, dude, yeah, like traffic was like, oh, you're gonna be fine. Then it's like, oh, and then I hear some accidents and stuff, and you're like, okay, typical.
Yeah, you're probably like, I should have taken the five,
Oh no,
five to the 118.
dude,
Yeah,
that was way worse for some reason. I don't know why. So yeah, I
huh.
stuck to the 34 and 101. Okay, cool. Let's check out what's going on. There's a lot of RSVPs over on LinkedIn. Open that up. If people are already there, listen to me rant. I'm glad you're here. All right,
Oh,
cool.
you were already going on there.
Yeah, we're live right now. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so awesome. Let me double check what's going on. Boyne, welcome. Glad you're here. It looks like we're live on all the services. So people tuning into Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn. What other ones? YouTube. Thanks for being a part of this. If you'd like to ask questions, use the text chat. I will relay them to Blake. And also, if you're just working on something, you want to share what you're working on, Blake's here to give you advice, feedback, insights. You never know what you don't know. So please do share. And with that, Blake, please introduce yourself.
Yeah. Welcome everyone. Thanks, Gary, for having me as always. These are always fun. Yeah. So my name is Blake Baxter. My background is socioeconomic theory, and essentially got my career in doing Cliff Notes version of this. So leaving out a bunch of stuff is kind of working with ultra net worth family office and the scaling of various companies that they were involved in on a global level. And then that continuation into venture capital, private equity, and always been around the space of emerging technologies because of that. And so yeah, we're going back 15 years. People talking about AI, which was just machine learning back then, and then people saying like is this AI yet, etc. Blockchain as in the fundamental side of it. I like to kind of separate myself from the crypto bros, which I don't have any issue with by any means. It's just people are always asked like, oh, so what's the best token to buy? And I'm like, no, that's not. Don't talk to me about that. I'm looking at this as the actual implementation of the instrument of the technology and what it can do in terms of unlocking things. Um, and kind of like this is part of the story with it. But so ended up creating an independent animation studio about 3.5, 4 years ago because my business partner on that is former Disney and worked at Netflix, Fox and stuff like that. But we grew up together. Gary likes me to say this, right? Because we grew up middle school playing Magic the Gathering, and in the alpha, beta, revised series days. Anyway, we reconnected and he was telling me what he was up to in this entire philosophical creative change and difference, moving from a linear workflow and pipeline into this iterative nonlinear approach and how to create this. And so we got together and we created immersive enterprise laboratories. So I like to say I wear two hats, sort of. It's more like three, but the one hat is on the very much entrepreneur side, which is completely it's been bootstrapped, so we haven't done any fundraising to date on it, which is Immersive Enterprise Laboratories, and it is all former Pixar, former Disney guys that we work with, and we created a new way of doing animation, which can is a hyper efficient way. So it's mashing live action with animation, kind of best in class of both sides to create amazing storytelling at a fraction of the cost. So instead of $100 to $200 million, big budget movie, we can essentially punch above our weight class in doing a movie for 10 to $50 million and in 18 months rather than 3 to even 9 years, which one of a project we were just looking at took 9 years to make. So with that, it also we unlock the ability for transmedia, which means that instead of a siloed process there, we're able to incorporate all the assets, create an IP ecosystem, and then deliver them out for the various kind of um, projects that one can do in the space of entertainment in general. And then the other hat I have is my investment group that's based in Singapore. And so what we look at there is actually scaling companies on a global sense, on a global level. And it's doing the entire trajectory from initial investment rounds. Usually it's later stage, so they have considerable revenue, but they're right to actually go the public markets route. And then I also do a bunch of advisory stuff. So hopefully that's enough. Gary, you know me well enough to say, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think it was great. Yeah, I I mean that's what's wonderful about you as a mentor. You have such a breadth of different experiences and backgrounds that allows you to speak from both sides, well, many sides of the the active ecosystem. A person's role as an employee, a founder, an investor, and so forth. So yeah, I think that was everything. With that concluded, I would love for people to post some wonderful questions in the chat. Share what you're working on in the chat. Hi Ray, I saw your comment just now. Um, Let me double check something real quick. Load up a found. Sorry. Okay, yeah, Ray, I'm seeing you posting here. Yes, we are still live. Ray, I think you got it fixed, so I'm glad that's back. We've got some new people that have joined us over on LinkedIn. As I just said, please share what you're working on, post questions for Blake, and we can get things rolling. While we wait for questions from the different services that we're live streaming on, Blake, something that's been really fun with you being a return mentor is that each time you've had a break from us and helping out, you've been going to different conventions and showcasing what IEL is doing. And I would love for you to share if anything's changed in regards to your methodology for what metrics you're tracking to determine the success of your participation in these different events, and the methodology in regards to preparing for those events in designing an experience to interact with attendees or partners and potential customers that you may encounter.
Yeah. So metric wise, this might be a funny one. This is the first time ever. So I just got back from Bali, which was for Epic's Unreal Fest, which is for Epic's Unreal Fest. What they typically do is the regional based conferences, right? So the bigger one that was in Orlando, we were at HP, AMD, Lenovo, sorry, HP, AMD, and NVIDIA. Apologies. They brought us out there to kind of showcase what we're doing with their amazing hardware. Yeah, it really enables us to do so much. And so in Bali, it was the same thing. A metric. This is the first time it's ever happened. I actually got a gift after speaking from one of the crowd member, like not anything with HP, no sponsor or anything like that. She just is like, I love this so much. She's like, here's a little trinket kind of thing. So that's a good metric. But some of them are also, it's tough for me. Everyone has a little bit of selfishness or narcissism in them, right? But it was quite special to hear from quite a few people that coming to the conference and seeing what we're doing and us speaking to it in this educational purpose mindset way, which is to show out there that people. I even use this line in the talk, was that now you don't need a war chest, right? Like at Disney and Marvel, and not to knock Disney or Marvel by any means, right? But most animation studios that are overseas don't have these war chests, right? Or 500-person teams that they're tapping into on an instance, right? And so people seeing that there's this opportunity that's there for them where they can actually be competitive on a global scale, which they never thought that they ever could be. So they're extremely interested in some of those points as well. Again, it's not like a number specific, right? But they're now engaging with us to see what where they can take the capabilities that can impact typically overlooked companies and regions for producing animation at a really high level. So that'll be really interesting, especially in the realm of upskilling local talent. Right, goes back to the philosophical principles of me personally. which I continually will always share, is where I like emerging technology because, in the case of like how it can create abundance, how it can unlock people, lower barriers of entry, and enable people to really, basically technology that can tap into the amazing talent that's in the world. And that doesn't have to be just creative talent, but just any talent in general. That's always been the passion. And I'm passionate about this is because each conference that we do, we're hearing from people where it's the, I always hope that this could happen. I wish this could happen. And that was even part of the talk. I started off with, imagine if you could do all this, right? And people are like, yeah, that'd be kind of shaking their head, like, yeah, that'd be awesome, right? Thinking, not realizing that what I'm going to go into is like really, pulling back the layers of the onion to show off, uh, essentially this is all the future is now, as you will, right? So,
I love that. I love how these experiences as you've been doing this have kind of given way to new ways of thinking about your approach and how you evaluate this and getting a gift like that's incredible. We got a question from Ray. Appreciate you posting. All right, Ray asks, what is the process to create an animated movie? Schedule over 18 months. And with that said, I love to hear how that process, the traditional process, played into how IEL developed, this new way of doing it, and how that integrated into the existing workflows.
mhm. Sure. So some of the things I'll say is not to knock how it has been done for the past 100 years, right? And that's the linear way. That was all by necessity, right? And that was because of the barriers that were all involved in it. So they had to create this entire workflow and process that's linear, right? But to explain that, and Ray, thanks for prompting, this great question, is that each step of the way to make any change, right, you have to go essentially through the workflow and all the way back to the beginning to make the changes, right? Because you won't know what it is until you actually see the final product. And then you have to destroy everything, then come back into it, right? This I feel from an outside perspective, and when I was initially we were getting into this, it's sort of like one of those things. It's like, well, why are you doing that? That's sounds horrible. Like, why would you be destroying, like, to improve upon a sculpture? You're like a physical piece of marble. You're not throwing the piece of marble and then restarting it every single time you try to make a change, right? You're going into it and you're refining and you're refining, and it's an iteration of it, right? And maybe you did chip off the wrong piece, and then you'll use that as a way to get that end result that you want, right? An example of it is in the Pixar way. They are very vocal with saying this, is that why their movies are so good is because they do them so many times and they get all the notes, and that's part of their massive budgets on it, is because they do them so many times. They see how the line is and how the line works and doesn't work, and what the color is and everything like that. But we thought about this and we said, well, what if you can just do it all real time, seeing this instant visualization of it? So if this hat doesn't match this shirt, right, because of color scheme, you can see what this hat looks like in every other color that actually matches and blends in with that environment and scene. And it goes out from there where, well, let's see the scene in direct sunlight, in the dark, in with full moon, with rain, with snow, like any element, with fog and atmosphere and all of those things. You're not going to know how these things actually are until you're in context. Bring this up, always work in context. Mark Andrews, who we work with, always says this too. And so it's kind of like we always hold truth to that, right? Because what you're then able to see is that you can make those adjustments, and those, what used to be cost millions of dollars to go through this entire workflow and pipeline, we can do for essentially pennies on the dollar and cents of it. So by a creative even knowing that they can iterate so simply and easily, and it's not going to break the budget for the entire movie, and you're not going to get fired because you made this one mistake, that changes that creative's mindset and perspective, where they'll be willing to make more experiments along with it, right? And so in that sense, this in context approach really is the transformative element that's out there, and that's where the reduction in costs is. But that's not it. It's also the efficiencies that are part of it too. So, for example, with it, we're able to do unscripted animation now, which is unheard of. And it's funny too, is that because even people who like have seen like 3D, which Pixar really revolutionized that whole type of animation, is that it was still in the siloed process, and now it's or this linear process, and now we're able to actually be in context and see the colors, see how everything comes together, even that delivery of line of how it works, does it hit or not, and we can make the active changes as needed too. So yeah.
It's awesome. And I mean, what's great about it too is this process. It's very lean and very agile, which is something that, you know, tech startups for the last 20 years has been really uh, at the forefront in terms of redefining what a business best practice is when it comes to innovation, when it comes to product, um, design and bring it to market. And it's interesting how you've brought elements of that to animation, where yeah, you can very quickly on the fly just whip something up, experience it, and get some feedback and get into that iterative process in a way that is much more additive, as you're saying, versus destructive and going back to the drawing board and starting all over. And that's something
Hmm.
like, before, when you're looking at like more traditional business, tech companies and everything else, like the concept of waterfall project management versus agile project management. Waterfall would be where you make that huge investment and you build what you think is the perfect product, bring it to market, and then you learn, oh crap, like all these assumptions we had were wrong. Now we got to go back and destroy everything and start fresh and do it all over again, which was very, as you kind of like touched on, resource intensive and time intensive. Being one of the biggest, most valuable resources you have is your time. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting how you guys have brought this new workflow together, and it's very much just lean methodology at play.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you talk about that too, Gary, because it's like, so what's fun about this, right, is that it's like true technology, and where it's not just about the technology, it's also about the story being told, right? And we talk about this all the time when it comes to pitches and pitch decks and everything like that. You can have the best technology, but if you don't tell a story with it about it, right, no one's going to be able to understand it, right? So it's now turning in like what this is. It's like here's a workflow and technology essentially, right? But it's enabling amazing storytelling to come from that, right? And the storytelling of how to even talk about what this workflow and technology is the reason why I'm going to these conferences and things like that, because there is such a an element that is very important and very key to really expressing, right? We actually, what we started to do at the conferences, and this is one of those aspects, is that we actually took our original IP to show off and actually reveal all the behind the scenes, how these things all come together and what this is, right? I mean, that's very important. It goes back to the pitches of startups and entrepreneurship, right? Where people actually need to see the things now. That's almost like an MVP in that sense, right? But then it's like this is now becoming tangible. They're actually able to see, rather than this theoretical idea of where it's, well, it's no longer vaporware, right? It's no longer this like just hey, we need $500,000 so that we can go do this. Go pay us for our own R&D, right? Where people think it's about the idea, but it's the execution that happens,
No,
and that's
absolutely.
what we're showing off now. Execution. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's brilliant you brought that up. Real quick, I want to welcome William and Ramsey over on Start Motto, where we're doing this event and piping it into all the other live streaming services. Um, Ramsey, William, post questions in the chat. If you're a member on Start Mata, Ramsey, if you join, you can also come up on stage and use your camera if you want to, but you can use your microphone to interact directly with Blake. And everyone that's joining us on LinkedIn that just joined, some new people came over, and also on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, use those text chats to share what you're working on. Post questions. I'll relay them to Blake. You'll get answers, you'll get feedback, advice, insights. As I've mentioned before, you don't know what you don't know. Got a wonderful mentor with immense experience to share with you. Um, And then, yeah, just touching on what you just said there, Blake, at the end, one of the most important things if you're a founder or, if, especially if you're like, in the creative field and you're trying to pitch something, it's so important to have demonstrations for them. Even if those are rough, it's fine. It just needs to be good enough to convey what exactly you intend to do and how you want to do it to those people. And like you're saying, walking people through the behind the scenes of how you're putting this together with your original IP, it's making it easy to understand, easy to follow, and relatable, right? And that's what I love seeing when I'm looking at a pitch deck, when, investors are looking at pitch decks. Simple little walkthroughs. They don't need to be like, lengthy. It could be like three little, like, slides that just show the start and finish, or start through finish. Here's where someone gets onboarded into the product. Here's how they get that, or, they first, start to interact with the product to get a good experience that's enjoyable. And here's how they get the benefit of that, right? Similar kind
Hmm.
of thing with what you're talking about, live with these people at the conference. It does so much to not just tell a story that is left to their imagination, which could be interpreted in a billion ways, but it's showing them exactly what it is. And I'm curious too, like from the investor side of things, like when you're looking at pitch decks, how important is it for you to see the product in action and the people that are utilizing it, like how it's benefiting them, how they're going to enjoy it, and what kind of recommendations do you have for someone demonstrating that to you?
Hmm. I mean, it kind of goes into the philosophy of the reason why that we kind of adjusted our business model on that side of things, right? Because you know, we the reason why I call it an investment group, the investment, because it's not VC private equity anymore. It's like we operate like a family office and a private equity group combined, where we look at companies that are scalable, that we can bring together, shell companies, RTOs, SPACs, DSPACs, like the whole realm of it all. But it's having that scale and ability where these companies have a story, have a journey, and there's already existing revenue to go through it, right? Because it's all that traction that you're kind of talking about, right? And because there is such a landscape out there where it used to be you could have an idea and someone's like, here's money to go build it out, and that was VCs 15, 20 years ago, right? Where that has now transitioned where it's like, no, I need to see that product, I need to see something. What can you do with essentially shoestring budget and whatnot, right? Unless you've already had your exit and you can go out there like some major founders that are out there where this is their third company and they've had two $1 billion exits before. The investor just knows, hey, I know that whatever I'm going to be putting into this has this return on that side, right? So that entire investment landscape is changing, and so you actually, um, I was telling someone recently about this. It's like they were like, hey, how do I do this when I don't have this ability, this ability, this ability? I said, well, all those things that you're talking about, use to your advantage, right? Change the energy and see how you can do that. So if you're trying to show off of your improvement, right? Show that you are improvement. You actually open up the doors so people will actually see this, and people will empathize and be supportive of it and your vulnerability. And by if you are that professional as you're saying that you are, there's going to be this trajectory that you need to get to that is showing off. You need to be, quote, on the public stage, whether it's a literal or hypothetical public stage, right? And if you are that good and of what you're saying, people need to see that too, right? And so get to that point and people will see the improvements, and again, use the things that are against you, for you. So yeah.
Yeah,
uh, yeah.
what's great about that too is it brings humanity to it, and that's what's most relatable to this and endears you to other people. Is it's not how much you're struggling, it's just that it is a struggle, right? That you have a vision, an ambition, a dream, and you're working towards it, and you're making progress. And it doesn't need to be a lot of progress; it's just any progress. That's what people can relate to. That's what people can get excited about, and find themselves being endeared to you about, because everyone has struggles. Everyone goes through these different, like experiences in a variety of different areas of life. It doesn't need to be only, building a business or building a career. Everyone has some sort of, like, ambition or dream or vision that they have, whether it's a birthday party for a friend or something else. It's all about, understanding the struggle and how to work towards that, and seeing someone do that, and then you wanting to play a role in that, you wanting to help support that. And so, yeah, it's very important to realize that you can, like as you said, leverage that perceived weakness as a strength to endear you to others and be relatable. Yeah. So yeah, the other thing too that's related to this is, for everyone listening that's working on a product, a landing page. Remember, landing page is a pitch to your customers. So you want to present it in a similar way as we're talking about here with, like, a pitch to investors. You want to demonstrate what your product is. You want to show it off, and make it easy to relate to and understand and follow. We got a question from Serenity. Ray, we'll touch on yours in just a second. But yeah, let me post Serenity's real quick for Blake. Okay, so Serenity asks, my startup has been around for 7 years and we've not needed a fundraise until now. Is this okay? That's a good question.
Yeah, yeah. No, of course it is. I actually think that that makes it very compelling and really interesting for investors, right? When they actually have seen this, because after that 7 years, there should be trajectory, there should be metrics, there should be all these essentially data points that point to why you need the raise, right? And especially if there's a story, again, goes back to story. If you can explain it and you can show what that story is and means, it is so much more impactful and so impressive with it, right? And so in this case, right, feel free to share any more details on it, right? But in those 7 years, have you had bumps in the road? Have you had downturns, right? What does it look like? Oh shoot, we're showing a downturn. Like, oh wait, the past 4 years it's been like this. Well, yeah, it could be because you're developing product, because you're doing something, right? But at the same time, it's how you explain that story, and you could also be on this upswing where you might be getting back to where your revenues were like 2-3 years ago and stuff like that. So, those elements and those aspects are interesting. So to just the blunt question of it, is it okay? Yes, it 100% is, and investors are going to probably like it too. Hopefully, things are all validated and everything like that. So, as I always say with everything I say, is that the nuances are all in the details that are underneath that question you're asking too. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it also relates to what you were just saying before, Blake, in regards to being vulnerable and leveraging that as a strength. And, having that long of history with your business, and like you just said, having, obvious ups and downs that come with any journey, any business, if you can use that to demonstrate your methodology of how you approach adversity, how you overcome adversity, how you learn from these, different hiccups and bumps in the road to develop more wisdom, to showcase your aptitude, it's going to go a long way of making you more trustworthy to investors with their money. They're going to feel more confident in your ability to take their money and utilize it to get to the next stage and eventually an exit for them,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not just flailing around, you're learning and applying those lessons to continuously grow and get further. So yeah, wonderful
Yeah,
insights.
it's to your point, right? It's, and even in this case for Serenity, right, where it's so an investor is going to be able to see what you've done with $1, right? Now they're excited to see what you can do with $10, right?
Yes, Cerny had a follow up posting right here. Awesome. Yeah, we're not growing as fast as when we first launched these days, but we're steady, and I believe that the fundraising will help us really get back to where we were and beyond.
Yep. Use that story, Serenity. Use the story of that. Explain that. It comes down to all those details of it, and so that if you can explain the story, this is why you're doing it. This is where the funds are being allocated, right? It's not so that you can go on a vacation and go buy an island in the Caribbean and then go, have the drinks with umbrellas in it, kind of thing, right? They see all these things and like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do this. We've been successful in this sense. This is just going to be the catalyst to take over this marketplace or this market set, and whatever that is. So speaking vaguely, of course, but apply those to your own insight.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump back to Ray asked a more generalized question. What are the costs and timelines for shorter projects like a legal scene recreation or architectural 3D rendering walkthrough?
Yeah, Ray, this is good stuff. So yeah, I mean, so shorter projects can be, not millions of dollars, so like we've actually done this because of relationships that are in the legal space of accident recreations. And it's, usually the price points there, I mean, they go up to like $50,000 in the general space of it. But we've been able to, with our workflow, is that create these, it's not like fairy tale storytelling, right? It is telling the story that really exhibits what the clients are going through or what they're trying to display, right? Literally having this conversation right before here, because I was getting coffee at, you know, funny enough, Gary, as I told you, Peddler's Fork, where our happy hours are last Thursday every month. There's your shameless plug for you, Gary, too. But like an architectural 3D rendering, right? So when you walk up to a building, right, it's evoking emotion to you, right? If you saw the Burj Khalifa, right, like in a 3D space, like a VR headset, you're walking up to it, right? It's just going to be very plain because unless people are actually actively doing this to create that story that's around it, right? When you're seeing it in person, there's a story being told where there's elements, there's all the senses that are going with you. Then you're seeing it in sunset and sunrise. You're seeing reflection coming off of it, right? You're seeing atmosphere. You're seeing the dust in the air because you're in the desert, right? There's all these things. There's seawater. There's the ocean air and the salt that's in the air that is hitting against your skin. How do you get this all involved in a digital space, right? That's all around you. That is where the storytelling is. And to Ray talking about that, and what that actually means in context is that for what they're typically already spending or around that realm, we're able to do a much better job. And so even with in terms of the experiment we did with a legal recreation of a scene that occurred, experts saw it and they said that this is probably one of it's not just probably, but I'm trying to be humble. Anyway, probably one of the best ones that they've ever seen because of the elements it actually told perspective from the client. So, yeah.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. Keegan asks, "Hey guys, thank you for your time. You're welcome. I recently started a fractional CFO business catering to seed Series A businesses and have a fairly steady pipeline of clients from strictly word of mouth. I really want to see where I can take the business, so I'm starting to be more deliberate with my marketing and networking efforts. Wanted to hear any suggestions you may have as to how I can grow my brand and get in front of more of these young, exciting companies who need a lot of handholding when it comes to building dynamic financial models, developing cohesive narratives, raising capital, etc. And all these things are incredibly important foundational things that most founders skip on, so it's good that you're helping them out. All right, Blake, what do you
Yeah.
got?"
Yeah, no, I mean, so there's a lot of ways to do it, and I think that there you can go to networking events, right, and which I think is extremely important, right. But there's a difference between an attorney going to. I'll just use this as an example, and probably a shameless plug for you again, Gary. But your lunches, right? Your lunches, they're amazing, right? There's a difference between the IP attorney, right? Right. I forget his actual firm's name. I just know his name. But who is it? Because you'll.
Yeah, there's
What's the
Mark.
company's name?
There's Mark,
Yeah.
and then the two Jonathans now.
Yeah. The two Jonathans. But what's their firm name?
SoCal AP, wonderful firm.
SoCal IP. Yeah, SoCal IP. Right. So like, there's a difference between them being there and being sponsors, right? Because it shows that they're actively participating and giving. Essentially, by sponsoring an event, they're actually giving to the community for it to happen, right? And the same thing with straddling, right? Is like they're putting themselves forward, and their methodology about it, right, is completely different than just someone who is an attorney showing up and saying, hey, I want to, this is what I'm doing, right? So there's networking that can be involved in that way. I think what is really interesting, and this is something that I've talked about also in the past couple of days coming off stuff, is that where corporations, like there's corporations that are out there, and look at yourself, in this sense, Keegan, with your business, is that you are a corporation. Just look at yourself as a company that's out there, whether however your LLC, whatever, blah blah, right? But you're a company, and then into how do you kind of discern yourself? How do you separate yourself from just being another fractional CFO that's out there? And the way that do that is that to provide and give to the community. It's what I call friend raising before you fundraise, right? So don't ask for anything. Provide valuable data and feedback to what's going on. For example, there's been a bunch of people that have approached me, us, IEL, over the years, and saying like, what you're doing is insane, like, it's so amazing, but they're all service providers. They're insurance providers, they're CFOs, like yourself, Keegan, etc. And what they've said is that, like, can I just present you guys to my clients? I'm not saying this is what you do, Keegan, with us, but this is just an example of it, where they want to show off who is in their network of who the experts are in all these places that can apply to the clients that they're dealing with, right? So if you have the best person for this, the best person for this, they're also more willing to also work with you as well, right? And then through that, when that company out there also talks to someone who needs your services too, it starts to turn into this snowball effect, or fruition effect, that then happens because you're creating an ecosystem around yourself. That's these marketing efforts. And whether that's also like, I've been to conferences where there's a guy who just has like a stack of $5 Starbucks gift cards. It's like, thanks for the conversation, here it is. And all of a sudden there's a sticker on there that's like of your name, of your brand. And it's like, hey, I'm literally explaining something that happened to a conference that I spoke at like 2 years ago. I don't remember his name. I could probably find it somewhere, right? But it's like, that's still stuck in my head because I'm like, yeah, that's actually really practical, right? That's something interesting. I'm grabbing a cup of coffee. Yeah, I'm going to use this $5 and whatever. It's gets a cup of coffee. He's like, coffee on me, kind of thing. So there's all these elements, but it's creating that ecosystem around you of support with things that really kind of comes together. So, yeah.
Right on. Yeah, and I mean that's like kind of the key, and the reason why we do the things that we do, the way we do them, is it's all about giving everyone an opportunity to demonstrate who they are and what it's like to work with them, be around them, to experience that, and that's what's going to set you apart, is that unique experience of being around you, working with you, your team, what your brand is, what it represents, how your product functions, services, all these different things. And the more you understand who that is going to appeal to the most and be the most enjoyable to, most beneficial to, it makes it a lot easier for you to be strategic and intentional about where you're putting yourself and who you're, connecting with and spending time around, and ultimately chasing as clients. When you get to doing, like, biz dev, marketing, ad buys, all those things, it's all going to be much more focused, and hopefully, if what you're doing is good and you're able to communicate it appropriately, it's going to be more efficient spend of your resources, all your
Yeah.
resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even to your point too, almost like around what Keegan is saying, but Anna's asking a similar question around like email marketing and things like that. But like, where it could also be, here's like just an idea, random, right? But it's like where you're not talking about your own company or what you're doing at all. You're actually showcasing other people and how fascinated and how exciting you are about them, right? That shows your support for the community. It comes back to the community. And if you're able to show off and or say all these different, you know showcase things that can make an impact on other people, that's information, it's valuable data, right? In the world of AI right now, a lot of people are talking about valuable data, not just data, right? Because data can be a whole bunch of crap, right? But if you're having valuable data that is able to educate and inform people, it is that's what's going to bring people back to you, right? It also comes back to like almost like a real estate agent, right? They're like the best micro marketers. I mean, some are macro, right? Billboards everywhere, yada yada. But they're amazing at micro marketing themselves to niche environments, right? And like they figure it out, right? Go study what they're doing in your area, right? And you'll get it's the successful ones, of course, right? But so like with it, when they go to a when they're selling a property, they have a whole entire list of service people, and they tell their clients like, yes, you can use these services, these service providers. I've made this list because they're the ones who I've worked with over the past 20 years, the past 10 years, however long. And these are the ones that I prefer, right? You can use whoever you want, but you take all the simplistic ways about that. And that's why people go to a realtor, is because they have the entire process, they have the entire format all mapped out, where it makes it the ease, like, the three most stressful or important things in a person's life is getting married. What is it? Getting, I always forget this, but getting married, buying a house, and
Probably having kids.
yeah, having kids or something like that, right? So buying a house is the one that's the most biggest financial decision of your life, kind of thing, right? And so by taking away the stress as much as possible, it's easier, right? So back to Keegan's point, create less stress for people in your environment and your ecosystem, and they'll come back to you a lot. So
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So Keegan also had a follow up question. Do VCs partner with fractionals ever?
yeah. So there's actually there's definitely VCs that'll partner with them. It just really depends on the relationship. So you can go after them and approach them and things like that. Some of them already have a network of it, so it just really kind of depends on who. Most VCs have an established network. That's where they're getting their deal flow from and everything like that. But also know that a lot of people go that direction of like, oh, well, this VC has this portfolio of 100 companies. They're going to need this across the board. Them, but there's also a lot of people approaching them for that too, right? So just what I always say is that look at what everyone is doing out there, and don't do that, right? Do something else that actually like uh, puts you out in front, because it is different.
Yeah, and like kind of like touching on this, like again to or drive point home, make yourself a resource to the community. There's a lot of other opportunities to do that as a mentor, as a speaker. Uh, Events like organizations similar to mine put on, incubators, accelerators. Look at what's going on with the city manager offices, the county economic development offices in your area, and see what events they're putting together, where they may need support from mentors or people like yourself with your skills to be a speaker, similar things like that. There's also SCORE, the SBA, other government funded agencies that are all about economic development, workforce development. Be a resource. See where you can allow yourself to be in front of people like Blake said, and be seen as someone that knows their stuff, is willing to help, and again gives them an opportunity to get to know you as a person and experience what it's like to be around you and potentially work with you.
Yeah.
Okay, we got more questions. I appreciate all the fun stuff that's coming in. Anna asked, how do you guys do email marketing?
Yeah, so it's kind of like what I touched upon before, right? And that's very broad and out there, right? There's a lot of like email marketing that's happening that looks like AI fluff, right? Where it's like I can immediately see it, right? They're large dashes, right? Or hyphens
I
that are in the
still
midst
use
of it.
those.
I know. I know. It's funny because there's people who used to use them. I know a few of them, right? Where they actually used to use them and they're like, wait, I can't use them anymore because that's one of the main tells for it, right? You can just see the format and structuring and you can tell it's AI. But with it, it's like, yeah, like you spent no time, and it's also like very formatted. It's like blah 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 blah, insert company here, blah blah, talk about how great they're doing, blah blah blah, etc. Right, and that just goes into trash, right? So when it comes to email marketing, if you want organic, if you want thoughtful, you got to be more thoughtful. Even throw in errors in there, right? I've actually told a couple of friends, I'm like, just try this out as an experiment, seeing click through rate and stuff like that. Like, just throw in errors in words because it might actually hook someone in, being like really stubborn about it. Like, like if you're gramophile, right? If you're a bibliophile, where you're like, what, this error is like bothering me. Now they're like focused on it because it's stuck in their head. Neurotic side. But it's like, there's all the things there. But I mean, when it comes to email marketing, I would say the most authentic that you can possibly be is the best way to go. have different lists, have also what the entire story of that person that goes through the process. So if it's a new person that comes to your contact list, there should be a list that they're part of that then migrates into them being a long time person that you've done outreach to, right? So there's an onboarding of it, what they're used to, and then it's like you going through what material, what information they're actually providing, how, is it this lengthy email. There's so many variants of it. It just kind of depends on industry, and are you selling product, are you selling, is it a consumer product good, is it a service, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of where I'm going to stop there with that. So authentic marketing is the best thing to do, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, that's the theme for
Tell stories.
yeah, yeah, that's the theme. Authenticity. And something else to touch on. Are you doing email marketing prematurely, right? And what kind of marketing are you doing? Because depending on your stage of your, company, your product, your service, you don't want to be pitching yet in a lot of cases, right? You want to focus on building authentic relationships first, and the easiest way to do that is seeking people out as mentors to get
Yep.
advice, to get feedback, to get insights from them, and see if you can buy them a coffee and sit down with them and walk them through your product and what you're doing and how you like intend to do these marketing and such. And you end up pitching them without pitching them, right? Because you're
Mm-hmm.
walking them through, you're showcasing what makes your product interesting and great from your perspective, and you also get that feedback to hopefully validate some of that. And if they're interested in it, they'll be like, "Hey, this is great. How can I use this? How can I get this?" And then you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
really? Oh, wow. Okay." Right? And you start there. And once you have a better understanding of your target customer profile, where they are, how to reach them, how to speak to them, how to demonstrate what your product and the unique experience of it is and the benefits and value, then it makes sense to start moving to the marketing cycle of targeting those people, right? So just keep that in mind too.
Yeah, and I mean, even with that, Gary, just to kind of, because it kind of sprung this thought too, right? It's like what that life cycle is of that customer, right? But it's also the follow up of what you do when someone responds, right? And it's sort of like, Gary, we've talked about this with like live in person events, where I think a big fail of a lot of groups that are out there, just in general, is that people have this amazing event, and then all of a sudden there's not a what's next, right? People got together, they had amazing conversations. How do you further facilitate that so it's not just the event? So they become thinking about that event until the next one happens. So if it's a twice a year kind of thing, if it's a once a year thing, if it's a once every month, once every day, once every week, whatever that is, you have to have a throughput that actually has continuity. So people, you become, frame of mind, the mindset there. I think some of the things like the lunches that does do that is because of the relationships that people establish there are so authentic and so real. Is that when they do follow up, it's like, oh, yeah, we met at the lunch, we met at the happy hour, we met at the this, right? And it's that constant of like, oh yeah, there is this value that comes out of whatever that is. So marketing, emails, value, there you go.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's definitely something that we talked about. I need to get a lot better at in regards to my own follow up as the organizer, but it's something that isn't so pressing because of what you just said, because the quality of those engagements of the people at the events are so authentic that a lot of it handles itself. And so yeah, but it still comes down to design thinking, intentionality, and being aware of these different moving parts that go from the start to finish of any experience. And it's more than just like this single experience of with your product or service or at an event. It's everything that leads up to it, to set the expectations with someone and communicate what is going to happen, and then what happens afterwards. And that with a product, it's like customer service, customer support, follow through to get feedback. And with an event, it's like, oh well, yeah, here's next steps of here's everyone that came, here's like reminders of what people are working on or whatever it is. So yeah, like all these different elements are really important and be aware of. And going back to just being a founder or even like a career professional and being aware of yourself as a personal brand, always remember It's the experience that people are having with you, your product, your brand, all these different elements at every touch point, not a singular one. Always design for those experiences to be enjoyable and beneficial, and you'll be doing great. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too. We got a big question from Santiago. So Santiago initially asked, wait, hang on, where to go? My partner and I are working on a competitor for Eventbrite. I have noticed there are rich local events, and I wanted to get more eyes on those events. So basic, question or context there, and then a follow up to that is, Gary told me, and I did, no one gives a crap about SEO, and to go out and make genuine connections. Absolutely. Which I did, and I have found local people who are interested in the platform. Something that I'm struggling with is how to balance time on building product and how much time I should spend on marketing and networking. I have a constant fear that the product isn't good enough and that I'm spending too much time networking and not working on anything. It's just two guys. Here's the site. Any opinion from the chat is welcome. Yeah, people are welcome to check out the site. I posted it, but the general questions are finding the balance between building the product and finding time to do marketing and networking, and then the fear of the product not being good enough. So Blake, go.
Yeah, again, it comes back to being vulnerable, right? If you're vulnerable and you actually state to people like, "Hey," because like what you're after is going after organic cultural experiences, right, on a local level. And I think if you explain to people like, "I'm trying to make this work so that these events can go be out there and further, to a broader audience, and then also where an audience can come and see amazing events. That's whether it's curated or just a huge long list of them, etc. But you're pulling communities together, and that's your talking point, right? So what you think is actually the fear of the product not being good enough. Use that to your advantage, where you're saying, I want to know what the community needs, right? So yes, it'll never be good enough, right? Because the community is always going to want different things, right? But you need to decide what is good enough, right? And part of that good enough is that you are providing something to the community that is out there on the small businesses side, right? Whether it's the events that they're doing of a small business specifically, or is it an event production company, whatever it is. But that's the small business approach inside of it there. And then it's the on the other side of the network of the people in the community that are trying to get involved in it, right? And so with it's that you decide what that is. And if your product can be launched and you start to do pilot events, you start to show off what it is, you start to get the users on the platform, all that engagement, have it as looking at the whole thing as stepping stones to get to where you want to be for your perfect product. It'll never be perfect. Always remember that. It'll never be perfect. Just got to go, right? If you're trying to do it in a siloed, in an incubated environment, it's not going to happen, right? You have to let it go out there. You have to let people actually touch it and beat it up. I use this example at a friend who was creating a mobile game, and I'll make this really quick. And I told him, "Hey, you just need to launch it within a community of having just alpha users, whatever it is." And I was using one of those users. He's like, "You have more error codes than the entire community right now." He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm breaking it for you. You need to know what's wrong with it. So I'm forcing it. I can see where all these mechanisms are." I started pushing and pulling, and it overloaded the system. I'm like, a random kid who's like 10 years old is going to get this and do the same exact thing without realizing it, right? And he's like, "Yeah, but now my developers have all this work, blah blah blah." But that's the thing, right? Get things out there, get people using it. It's going to break, and don't go dark though, right? Always have something that is as working that people can come to, and ensure that there's something that where the lights are always on too. So hopefully that helps.
It helped me. I loved it. I loved hearing it. And like the biggest takeaway there is, like you said, to remember that it's never going to be perfect, and you need to be okay with that. You need to let that go. I know from my own experience and doing this for a long time with helping other people and being an organizer in these different communities, that it's very easy to become obsessed with your vision, your ambition, and that idea of making it perfect, of it not being good enough, is a real kind of, source of fuel for that. And you want to strive for balance in your life. You want to not overwork. You want to, yeah, be hardworking, but you got to leave space for you to recalibrate, to recover, and have other experience in life that can make you a better person, a better leader, a better partner, in any capacity, and also more innovative. Because all those
Yeah.
different, experiences of different people and things is going to show you new ways of thinking and doing things, and that's going to organically make you a better innovator. So I'm glad you brought that, to the forefront.
Yeah, and one last thing on what Santiago is talking about, in the vulnerability aspect of it all, right? It sounds like you saw there's a need in the marketplace because you saw all these events that were happening and you wanted to connect people to it, and you probably wanted it for yourself. So that's your talking point right there. You're from the community, making something for the community, right? Because you saw a need for it, and so if you explain that to people, if people know that that's where it came from, right? It's people start to see and recognize with that, and they become supportive because you're from that place, right? It's like the whole local, I'm against this, I'm the whole locals only, right, where they're like willing to help more locals, et cetera, et cetera. I'm always about open borders, everything like that, where it's like, people come in, go experience it like you, if you've been here for 1 minute or you've been here for 100 years, right? But with this is that you're from the community, and you're making something that the community needs, and you saw a niche there, and so that's your story, that's your talking point, and that's why you should be vulnerable and open up and say, hey, look, it's not going to be perfect. So yeah.
Yeah, and every community has room for connection, especially now, and especially if you're in America, there's always more room for people to come together and be neighborly, regardless of where they're from or anything like that. And you sharing that as your mission and doing the work, it's going to endear you to people. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. Like the mission alone is enough for people to be like, oh, that's really fun. That's great. Like, I appreciate that you're doing that. How can I help? Right? It's going to lead to that. So don't be so shy or worried about it. Yeah. Serenity asks, do you have any tips for solo founders?
um yeah, I mean, that's pretty broad out there. Just like, what I say is this, is that go out there, be goofy, break stuff, right? That's what this is all about. It's breaking stuff to break the mold, to do something different, to um, put yourself forward and out there. What can you do with nothing, right? That's what I always think is important too. It's to show off that there's capability, there's grit, there is getting through adversity. Gary, you brought this up before. Getting through all those mechanisms, all those things, all those barriers that are there in place to potentially block someone, right? Tell your story. Know how to tell your story. Know that you need some sort of buzz, catch, whatever, to bring someone in to be really interested in what you're doing. What that means is not explain in 60 seconds a whole bunch of words and garble that no one knows. Be able to explain in extreme basic layman's terms, we are this company that's revolutionizing this industry because we saw this. That is it alone, straightforward. If someone is interested, they'll talk to you more. That's when you can use the lingo and the jargon and everything like that. Make it as simple as possible, because anyone can then understand it and be like, oh, I understand what they're doing because they're making efficiencies here. They're doing this. They changed this. Yeah, that's what I could say around, for solo founders. I guess that's any founder in general. Solo founders, you're doing a ton yourself. To to Gary's point, take a break. Know when to go, as they say, touch grass.
We're coming up on time. There's another question that I saw, and this might be, yeah, this is Serenity too, but she posted over on the Discord. How does one go about finding a mentor? I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'd like to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, heck, I've been become mentor because someone just went up to me after talking, even at 805 events, and like, "Hey, can you help me?" I'm like, "Who are you?" Right? And that's where it led to. Other times it's been where it's someone who you look up to in any capacity, right? Whether it's what they're doing in life, what they're doing professionally, what they're doing personality, all of those different things. Someone that you resonate with, someone that you have a vibrational frequency with, right? That they're not thinking one way, you're thinking another way, and stuff like that. Although you can have mentors like that too, not saying you can't. But if you're looking for a mentor and you don't have a mentor, think someone who just thinks like you, that you look up to, and you can talk to them in an open way. Ask them for a to you take them to coffee, you take them to lunch, right? And say that, hey, you've been watching them. It sounds creepy, stalker status, right? You've been watching them from afar. No, but you've been seeing what they do in life, and that you're extremely grateful because they have inspired you, right? And that you want to do these things, and you feel that there's guidance and wisdom that they can give you, and go about that, right? And you don't even have to ask them to be your mentor initially, right? It's not like you're proposing. You're not saying, "Will you be my wife? Will you be my husband?" Whatever it is, you're just going out there and you're saying, "Hey, I appreciate you," right? Start it there, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, and then you can pop the question.
Yeah, I mean, I like that what you said. You don't need to ask them to be your mentor, and you probably shouldn't because, like you're saying, it puts a label on things. It's something that will organically formulate as, oh, this is a mentor mentee relationship. I can refer to this person as my mentor. I refer to many people as my mentor without ever asking them to be my mentor. And
Yeah,
it's just as simple as what you said. Hey, I admire this about you. I would love to get your advice. I'd love to get your feedback on this. And kind of like building on that, be kind of relevant in regards to what it is that you admire, what it is that you look up to, and what it is that you're trying to learn from them or get, like relevant feedback, advice, insights about, which relates to these things that you admire in them, right? And like you said, it's going to endear you to them because most people hearing that will be like, oh, that's so great. I'm so excited that I was able to do that and inspire someone or make you feel that way and be looked up to in that way. But you got to keep in mind, kind of like saying it's you know there's a lot of people that are getting asked these types of questions and for support. A lot of these people, especially higher profile ones, are very busy and very stressed. So be okay with not getting a response, but also don't be afraid to reach out again. Just don't do it repeatedly in high frequency, right?
yeah,
Like, yeah, like Blake, I'm sure
yeah,
you can touch on what you think is a appropriate time frame.
yeah. No, I mean, and even to your point too about, like, well, when I was saying about asking something, got to what you followed up with. I've been in scenarios where all of a sudden someone comes up to me, is like, "Oh, you're so and so's mentor." I'm like, "Sure, I guess so." Like, I thought we were just friends, something like that. Or like, I'll be in it, and it's like, "Yeah, my mentor Blake." Like, I'm standing next to the guy. I'm like, "Cool, man." Like, sometimes also it's like nice hearing that, because you're like, how they're referring you to other people, but it's just a relationship, right? Everything is just a relationship. Period. End of story. So, yeah. So,
Right on. Yeah, I'm glad that helped, Serenity. So yeah, don't be shy about reaching out to people, no matter who they are. Like I've shared this before. Like when I got started as a photographer in high school, photographing bands, is because my buddy had the email address for 311's manager and encouraged me to reach out and ask for a photo pass.
yep.
It worked out, and then I realized I can reach out to all kinds of big wigs, and I started doing that. For my first startup, I had um, free exhibitor booths at Taste of Chaos tour, which was like the Warp Tour, their other version of that. I reached out to the founder of the tours, and I shared what I was working on, my goal, my mission for my startup. It was helping creative people, and I was like, "How much would it cost?" And he's like, "Oh, you have a free booth for these 6 tour dates." I was like, "Wait,
Yep.
what? That's amazing." So you want to lead with your passion, lead with your mission, and kind of like what your Blake was saying to Santiago, right? Like, be vulnerable, show how people can help you in a way that is endearing and fun, right? Not transactional and gross. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
authenticity.
even to that point too, to Gary, right? If you told, you probably, the guy probably knew you had no money, right? And he's like, and if he's like, "Yeah, it's going to be," and just say like, "I don't have money. I don't have a budget that, what you're after. I'm not going to be able to spend $100,000 for a booth at this conference or whatever." they'll figure out a way to get you involved. There's someone that does have the booth, but they don't have the content. They don't have the this. They don't have the that. So all that to be said, it's amazing out there, right? So
Yeah, yeah, that too. Like something that you touch on is important. Like you can always barter, right? And that's what
yeah,
it is, right? Figure out what value you can bring, what you can barter through your product, your services, or your own personal, like ability as a marketing person or a UX designer, something else that you could trade services or services that are unrelated to your business, but it's something you can still provide as a person, right? There's all kinds of different opportunities there that a lot of people don't think about and they don't explore enough. But you never know. Yeah, cool. Uh, we're over time. Blake, you're always amazing, and I love this so much, and so grateful for you and your friendship. So thank you. Everyone that was participating, this is awesome. It's a big group, so active. It's great seeing this because we've been doing this, a little bit now, but it's growing momentum and it's feeling great. So thank you so much for being bold and being a part of this. Blake, you got any final notes, any final tips, insights,
yeah.
suggestions? What?
No, I mean, of course, thank you, Gary. Right. I think the theme of a lot of this, right, is around community being vulnerable and being out there, right, and adding value to what is around, right. Add value to what is ever in your orbit, right. If that is the entire world, great. If that is just the block that is around you, great too, right. How can you add value? How can you add support? How can you be there for people? Be vulnerable, be open, be out there, right. Build the community, build the environment that you want to be part of, right? Add to it, be additive, and also have fun, go break stuff, go do cool shit. So appreciate the community and everyone for joining. Uh, See you next time. Is that what we just sign off?
Yeah, yeah. I'll get you on the calendar. I'll follow up with
Yeah.
you. All right, yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Keep an eye on the calendars. I post links to them. All right, take care. Have a good week,
Cool.
everyone. Have a fun
See you,
holiday.
everyone.
Thanks, William. Take care. Later, Blaine. Later, MZ.